Welcome to Beyond the Press Release, a production of Gorecom in which we speak to small cap executives right after they put out important news. And the news today is big. It's from American Creek Resources, which trades on the TSX Venture Exchange on the stock symbol AMK. With us to talk about it is Darren Blaney. He's President CEO. For those of you new to the story, quick update here, or just a quick summary. American Creek has put together an impressive, and that's an understatement, portfolio of really high potential gold properties in BC's prolific Golden Triangle, one of the richest areas of mineralization in the world. Their flagship, Treaty Creek, is joint ventured with Tudor Gold, whose CEO Walter Storm funded Osisko right through to becoming a world-class gold mine before he sold it for a few $billion. In fact, Treaty Creek is so prospective that Eric Sprott is an investor in both American Creek and Tudor Gold, and he's on record as saying they may have 30, 40, maybe even 50 million ounces up there. So the press release that came out the other day is American Creek Resources announces spinout of Dunwell property and other properties and assets, probably because Treaty Creek is so big, it's overshadowing everything else. Darren, welcome to the show, buddy.
Hey, George, good to be back with you. Hey,
yeah, great.
That summary there, I don't even need to say anything. You said it all.
Well, I want to get that stuff out of the way because you're going to give us the new stuff, which is great. But yeah, glad to have you back because Kelvin was the superstar for a little while you did the hard work up in the bush.
Yeah, it's been crazy lately. Yeah,
which is great. I mean, whenever I hear that the CEO is there and we can't even talk, that's great news. Reasons for the spin out. Why the spin out? Why now?
Sure. Good question. This is something we've been working on for a while, George. Spinouts are an awful lot of work. Oh, yeah. You know, I think we got 4 different lawyers working on it, a couple auditors, U.S. tax counsel, on and on and on. And it's been in the works for a while. And now, of course, we've had the press release come out and the market's aware of what's going on here. So in a nutshell, the reason why you would do a spin out and the reason why we chose to do a spin out, couple of reasons in our situation. One of them is Treaty's doing phenomenally well. You and I have covered the progress of Treaty over the last several years, and especially the exciting stuff that's happened these last few months. You've talked with Calvin as well on some of that. But the net effect of that is that Treaty is overshadowing really everything else in American Creek, including some other great properties there that really have a lot of potential. A couple of them, I would think, even potentially world-class potential, but Treaty, and I guess rightly so, is getting all the limelight, getting all the attention because of the big things that are happening there. And so one of the things that we've looked at is, of course, we always have foremost in our mind to increase shareholder value. And one of the ways that we could do that is to get some value for some of those other projects. And so we looked at a spin out as the best way to do that. In effect, leaving Treaty Creek in American Creek, creating a new public company, spinning those assets that aren't getting any attention, aren't getting any love, that people aren't even really aware of, to be honest, into a new public company. All the shareholders that are existing shareholders of American Creek at the time get pro rata shares in the new public company. So it's a great way to create shareholder value, great way to create bonus shares, if you will, and get love and attention on some of those other projects. That's one of the main reasons. Another reason why is, at some point, we have no intention of being miners. We're an exploration company. We love to thrill the chase, love finding something, proving it up. And I don't believe that Walter wants to be a miner either. As you mentioned in your summary, he developed Osisko. He's one of the first financiers, financing all the way to a sale of $3.9 billion to a company that would take it into the production phase. And so if that's our objective, then to not be a miner, at some point you need to position the thing and get ready for an offer, a sale, a takeover, whatever that might look like. And that's the other reason why we're doing a spin out. Cleaning up American Creek, getting some of the other assets out of American Creek so that if we were to sell American Creek as a company, that those other assets aren't lost in the transaction, that we don't lose those, because that isn't really what the acquirer is interested in. They're interested in Treaty Creek. So those are two main reasons. There's some others as well, all positive, but those are the main ones, George.
So I have to ask you about that. I've got to ask you a follow-up because that's almost like a blockbuster. So I know you're not calling for an acquisition yet, but Are you guys starting to feel that the environment and the circumstances and all the factors are in place for, something like that happening in the near future, over the next 12 months? I'm not talking about imminent tomorrow, but is that what it feels like to you guys, that you're almost there?
We've had some big fish circling around, whale type fish circling around for a while. And we've touched on that in the past. Walter and Tudor are the operator of the project. So he's really leading that charge. That's one of the reasons why we entered in the joint venture with Walter in the first place, is he's been there, done that. And who better than Walter Storm to lead negotiations and lead the charge going forward to figure out what we're going to do with Treaty Creek and be able to do some deal in the future. Going beyond that and saying more, I need to be careful. There are some that are poking around. I think given Eric Sprott's involvement with the project and, him passing the word out as far as the potential size of the thing, that's gotten the attention of some majors. Of course, Sprott has an open door to really anybody he wants in the industry. And so there are some things going on in the background. As far as timing, I don't know. I know that we're planning, as we've talked about before, and as you've talked about with Calvin before, planning on a significant maiden resource calculation coming out. That's what they're working on right now. There's 6 drills turning at Treaty Creek still. They've been turning for the past quite a few months here, and will continue to go as long as they can go. So with every meter that's being drilled, of course, ounces are just racking up. And so at some point here, it would make sense for somebody to step in before it gets too big, maybe before it gets to the proven stage. I don't know. I mean, we'll just have to wait and see how that plays out, George.
Okay. So, and trust me, I would love to change. And I can almost feel people who are watching this at home saying, keep going, but I've got it. There's only so much more you can say right now, but that alone, that's a great reason for the spin out. And I'd even consider that going into this with these questions. So that's fantastic. The spin out, let's talk about some of the advantages, what the shareholders of American Creek are going to get. And by the way, that's shareholders as of record when the time comes. So there's still time for people to become shareholders. Correct. And benefit from the spin out.
That's correct.
If I own 100 shares, what's the benefit to me as a shareholder?
Sure. So let's talk about the mechanics of a spin out a little bit then, and then we'll get into some of those advantages. So mechanics are that if you're an American Creek shareholder by the record date, as you've just mentioned, which is going to be some date here later in the fall, for every share of American Creek you have, you also get pro rata ownership in the spin out. There's a ratio that's been calculated. It's a rough ratio. We put that out in the news release. It's roughly 8 or 9. For every 8 or 9 shares of American Creek you have, you'll get 1 spin out share. That's subject to adjustment a little bit because there's still options and warrants that are in the money that people could exercise between now and then. So just an interesting side note. So in working with the lawyers, accountants, and auditors and everybody else, this is the first time that any of them that ever worked on a spin out where the mother company, in this case being American Creek, actually had options and options and warrants that were in the money and way in the money. And so it's actually cost us a bit of time and a bit of figure out how to do that. It's a good problem to have, of course, but anyway,
took the words out of my mouth.
Interesting side note, but all the American Creek shareholders will get pro rata shares in the spin out. There's a meeting that'll be held on December 3rd. That's a special and annual general meeting where the transaction will be voted upon. In order for the thing to pass, and I don't know why it wouldn't pass, because in my mind you'd have to be crazy to not vote for it. You're getting shares, right out of the sky, basically. But we have to have 2/3 of the votes that are cast voting for it. We don't think that'll be an issue, and so there'll be a little bit of time after that vote. Probably the end of December. You got Christmas in there, of course. Realistically, the first part of January is when the transaction should close. I should mention as well, the transaction is subject to some conditions. So, it's not a slam dunk. And I have to say this, in the disclaimer world. So it's subject to the exchange.
But those are pretty standard right there. And you don't see any big or out of the ordinary.
No.
Those are standard approvals you got to get.
No-brainer, but still there's steps you have to go through. The BC Supreme Court has to approve it. Shareholders have to approve it. Venture has to approve it. So those are some of the conditions that are on it, but we don't see any issues at all. It's actually looking very good.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen a situation, unless it's highly predatory, and this isn't, that's for sure, where
Right.
that would be that would be rejected by any one of those three.
Right.
All right, so Darren, let's fast forward. It's the first or second week of January. The spinout's taking place. Dunwell is on its own now. Let's talk about that. How great is Dunwell? It's one thing for me to have those pro rata shares, which is going to be an amazing, New Year's, since Christmas, New Year's bonus.
There you go.
About that. But then going forward, maybe talk to people about how great Dunwell is right now and what your plans are in order to really, generate that value.
Sure. So for those that aren't aware, I'll give a little bit of background on the Dunwell project maybe. It's in the Golden Triangle. It's just a few minutes outside of Stewart, BC, right at the top end of the Portland Canal. It's quite unique for the Golden Triangle in that, you can be eating breakfast at the hotel and actually be in the property at one of the mine adits in about 13 minutes by vehicle. Low elevation, you can actually work there year round, which again is very unique for that part of the world. Usually it's all helicopter and very short window to work and so forth. So it's got some logistical advantages as well as being in the triangle, which is on fire right now. Lots of interest in Golden Triangle projects. I've lost track of how many calls with companies looking to get a foot in the door in Golden Triangle, noticing our Dunwell project and wanting a piece of it, wanting to do a JV or an option or whatever. But we want to roll with this thing ourselves. We've been saving it, waiting for the right time to do a spin-out transaction. We've had that in mind for quite a while here. Now is the time. We look at what gold's doing. We look at the developments in the Golden Triangle. And so we pulled the trigger on that transaction now. The Dunwell itself, it's a past producing mine. It didn't shut down because it ran out of ore. It shut down because of war and other things, like so many other projects in British Columbia. Many of the projects around us, in fact, our neighbors even are opening up. The old Premier Silback mine just across the mountain range from the Dunwell being reopened again. Ascot's doing a great job developing that, putting it back into being a producing mine. So this is another one of those where that's the objective. Go in there, show that there's still ore in the ground, show that there's an extension from the past historic workings, also show that there's parallel zones, and put it all together in one big package. One of the things we get asked quite often is, if the Dunwell's so great and it's sitting right outside of Stewart in the Golden Triangle, why the heck is it still there and open for development? Well, one of the main reasons is it was held in fractional ownership. So there's a thing in British Columbia called Crown Grants. Kind of like the Homesteading Act in other parts of the world, where if you found something promising on a piece of ground, you could apply to the government, get issued a Crown Grant. And that was your piece of ground until, you either died or didn't get passed forward in the estate or whatever. But there's some phenomenal high-grade gold and silver showings in this area, and it was all fractured up. Some of it held in estates, some otherwise. Nobody ever held all the ground in a big, meaningful package where you could do anything useful. One person would hang on to their high-grade showing, but it wasn't big enough to do anything as far as a public company goes. Another individual would do the same thing. And so over the course of the last several years, we put several deals together, amalgamating this package all into one big package.
Fantastic.
We culminated that with last year. We bought 40-some Crown Grants that were overlapping some of the Dunwell, as well as extending it to the south as well on trend. And then we've done some other things. So we did an IP survey last fall, which showed us some very good features and structure. We poked a few drill holes in there last year to try and make good correlation between the geophysics and the actual core coming into the ground so that we could model, figure out where to go in the next stages of exploration. And that was very successful. And then what we did this year is we flew a MAG survey, helicopter-borne MAG survey, and a LiDAR survey. It was about a $250,000 survey. Turned out very, very promising. We're just looking at those results right now. The definition and the detail, I think, blew all of our minds as far as what that actually showed. The LiDAR in particular, there's a structure going through there called the Portland Canal Fissure Zone. It's a major fault structure with other faults coming off, and it shows up so well, it's amazing. So we're just formulating where we're going to drill next. We've got very good correlation. We now have three kinds of, the induced polarity, the MAG, and the LiDAR, all being three kinds of geophysics now that we can correlate with, including a few of our own holes and correlating with all the the past, soils and everything else that's been done there. And so just putting that all together. And so we're going to hit the Dunwell full steam ahead in the Spinout.
And I got to give you guys credit. One thing that your team now is almost known for is your patience on projects and properties that eventually pay off. I mean,
I don't know if I'm very patient. I want to hit the ground running here, but anyway, it's
what I meant to say was, Treaty Creek, you held on to it through thick and thin, everything, you believed in it, and look where it's at now. And what I was referring to with Dunwell is the fact that it took you years for you guys to piece it all together. You did the work that nobody else was willing or capable of doing at the end of the day. I mean, I don't think I could. That's pretty painstaking, and that's a big part of your life. But now you guys have assembled what it sounds like a pretty incredible package, and now everyone wants a piece of it. But I'm glad to hear that the company's going to be moving, full steam ahead.
Yes, that's really the front and center for the Spinout. But of course, if you look at the press release of what we've announced, most of the other properties are also coming out of American Creek and headed over to the Spinout as well. And so there's some other ones there as well that really have been overlooked. That, as you know, you and I have talked about this before. We've been in a brutal bear market for over a decade, and some stuff was just put in park. It was really put in maintenance. You go into survival mode. But now that we see the gold market starting to pick up, lots of attention, lots of money flowing in, now's a great time to unlock the potential of some of these other projects as well, George. And we're going to do that in the Spinout.
So let's talk about that. Yeah, you've mentioned how bullish you are on the gold market, and it seems like there's no shortage of JVs, partnerships, money that's available to great. So let's first talk about gold. I'm looking at right now is basically right 1900, a couple bucks under 1897.10 as we're talking. Where do you need gold to be? You hear all sorts of talk, right? Gold's going to 3,000, 4,000. That would be great, obviously. But do you need it to get there? Or if you're sitting at $2,000, do the economics of Dunwell look great, potentially even at $2,000?
I think right where we are is just fine as far as the gold price goes. But I'm a believer that we're headed higher. There's a lot of people a heck of a lot smarter than you and I that are coming out with some pretty credible, projections and so forth, based on some fundamentals that just keep getting stronger. The unfortunate reality is if gold does hit some of those targets, we've got some very reliable people saying $5,000, $10,000 an ounce. The unfortunate thing is some of the other parts of the economy and other things aren't going to be looking so hot if that's what happens.
Yeah, so I don't want the destruction.
I don't know that we really want to see $1,000 gold right now.
$2,500, $2,700 gold would be perfect. Would be just gravy without any.
I think we can see that in the next 12 months. I really do. And you look at some of the profit of some of these mining companies, not exploration companies, but mining companies. When gold even rises $100, it's incredible. And so what that does is that attracts more and more attention to the industry. Money trickles down, of course, from the miners to the major explorers down to the juniors and so forth. And we're seeing a lot of that attention happen now. And I think this is the start of a bigger movement to happen here.
So one part then, as part of this move, you're looking at the underlying fundamentals, the gold price, got that. The second part is lot of money in the industry let me just say it straight out. The phone is ringing pretty consistently. There's no shortage of either partnerships or money if you really wanted it.
Yeah, it was really hot during the summer. July, August were insane. We've had a bit of a consolidation period here, a bit of a cooling off, which to be honest was needed. It was kind of overblown. And of course, I think some of that is caused, of course, by what's happening south of us with the US election and some of the uncertainty around that and what that's all going to look like. It's a little wild down there, as you know, right now. But, I see that playing out only in the benefit of gold. I don't think it matters who wins. I, of course, have my own opinion on who I want to win, but I don't think it matters who wins. They're still going to keep printing money with reckless abandon. The fundamentals for gold are going to continue to get stronger. The fundamentals for hard assets, commodities in general, are just going to get stronger. And so I think that's the perfect environment. We might be in a little bit of a pause here yet until after the actual election. But then I think the afterburners turn on, and I think it's going to get pretty exciting for our industry.
But I got to tell you, a pause at $1,900 as we're sitting here talking, that's a great pause.
Yeah,
That's a
it didn't
fantastic, Bob,
consolidate
right?
very much, did it?
A year ago, we would have taken that all day long. And
Right.
I think I think it's a nice, it's a nice, healthy number.
Sure,
Um, let's end it off with this. Treaty Creek.
sure.
What's next? What's going on? Because obviously the shareholders, the reason why we're here and we're all going to benefit from the Dunwell spin out as well as the other assets is
Right, right.
because of American Creek and Treaty Creek. What can you tell us about what's happening at Treaty Creek right now and what we should be looking for, between now and December 31st?
Sure. Yeah, let's talk about that. Like I mentioned before, there's 6 drills still turning at Treaty Creek right now. They're going to go as late as they can go. There's even talk of maybe going way later than we've ever gone before, moving back onto the glacier again and drilling on the glacier to try and get some more size to the thing. Every step out thus far has hit. There's still no bounds to this thing. It's still open in every direction, including at depth. We also are getting better and better intersections as the drill turns, and they're moving towards the part of the project that in the past has held some of the higher grades. And so I expect some of the results to come out will be even better than ones we've seen. But, I'll just read you one here, a recent intersection that came out just for people that, haven't been following this. 930 meters of 1.07 grams per ton gold. And within that 930 meters, 248 meters of 2 grams gold. There's also some silver and some copper with that. That's one thing that's interesting that's showing up in the core. We're starting to see more visible gold, starting to see more copper, starting to see more silver, and there's some new zones that become apparent here as well. There seems to be a rich section right through the thing, as well as the first 300 meters that Ken Conkin, who's our star geologist, by the way, is doing a superb job in moving this thing forward. He calls the 300 zone. That really is a game changer as far as economics when you've got the top 300 meters from surface down being about 1 gram gold, mineable with an open pit model.
Unbelievable.
Sprott has launched himself into this thing in a big way and really latched onto the story. He's injected a lot of millions into the project through the various JV partners, including us. I'm going to read you a couple quotes, and I'm going to read, just so I don't screw these up, I'll read you a couple quotes directly from his mouth.
Please do.
Including one that came out in the last 2 weeks. So here's just a couple of them, and he's made several. So he said this. This was on September 25th, not long ago. This could be one of the biggest deposits in the Americas. Okay, Sprott's no dummy. Sprott's been around. He's all over in the industry. Gold and silver are his baby, and for that to come out of his mouth, people should pay attention to that. Here's another one from a little bit earlier. This is back in July. Certainly looks like they have 20 million ounces gold, and they could easily get to 30 or 40 or 50 million ounces of gold. That was July 24th of this same year.
That was a big one. That
was a big one. That's the one that you
knocked
referenced
me off my chair to see those numbers being thrown around.
Yeah, that's the one you referenced in your summary there. And, I think he's right. I'm not going to argue with him. Again, we look at what's coming out of the ground in the drill, and there's good reason to be excited about what's happening at Treaty Creek.
When do you have a ballpark when we should be looking for, or when Tudor actually may be coming out with a maiden resource estimate? Is there any kind of timeline for that? Not a specific day, but next month, next quarter. What are you thinking?
Good question. So Tudor has come out in their news releases and has stated that they're shooting for around the end of the year. I don't know if that's realistic or not. Should be shortly, thereafter, if not. But some of the realities of working through this season are you've got, of course, the whole COVID thing. COVID has slowed down labs. That's one of the big things that happen. You can't have workers working right beside each other. And so the labs are backed up more than we would have hoped at this time of year. We got a lot of results still to come from Treaty Creek. I think, don't quote me on this, but I think we've only released about 15,000 meters of assay results. And Tudor's looking to bang off 40,000 meters of drilling. So
yeah, and I've been wondering where those results are. I guess that's the explanation. You're right. They can't be in close contact, working hard, furiously. They've got to probably be working at 1/3 the pace if they're lucky.
Yeah, that's one of the realities of our present COVID situation. So we've got, 20,000 meters of drill results still to come out, and we're expecting more of the same. There's no indications at all that they're going to be any less, and there's potential that they could be better even at the intersections we've had thus far. The other interesting thing is, George, even a couple of the camps up in the Golden Triangle were shut down temporarily because of COVID. Ours, thankfully, wasn't. The guys have just plowed through, kept going. They got great COVID protocols, and put a lot of good things in place. And I give full credit, to Sean at Morecore Drilling and to Conkin and the Tudor team for what they've been able to pull off, because this wasn't an easy year to explore. A lot of obstacles, and they're doing it big time. And so lots of good results to come. As far as when the actual maiden resource will come out, that's really Tudor's call. They're the operator of that.
Sure.
Depend on, first of all, obviously getting the results back. You can't come out with the resource without results. And then, they've already got P&E working on it. That's been in the works for quite a while. So I'm sure they'll get it out just as soon as they can. And I think some heads are going to turn when that comes out. That puts a tangible number on some of this blue sky.
Well, I'm excited for you guys, because you guys are the reason that all of us shareholders are now, sitting by waiting for this. So I give credit to you guys. And I'm really happy for all the shareholders, knowing that in the next, 3-4 months, we're going to get a really good first big look at, what Treaty Creek has got. And I'm excited for everybody, but very thankful to you guys because of how you held on through the dark days and what you did. And you didn't run off into the hottest commodity or turn American Creek into a cannabis company or any of that nonsense. And hats off to you, to all of you, Darren.
Thanks, George. I appreciate that. And I should also mention, we very much appreciate, again, not only the Tudor team, the JV partners for everything that's worked so well, but also our shareholders. All our shareholders, the ones that have been in here for quite some time have been through an awful lot as well. It's been a long haul through a decade of brutal market, through some legal wranglings and the other things that have happened in the past. But our shareholders now are poised to get a reward, not just from Treaty Creek and the American Creek side of things, but also through the spinout now. We're expecting big things to happen in that spinout.
Darren, thanks so much, man. The enthusiasm comes through. The facts come through. This has been, Kelvin, sorry, we've done a few this year, but this, I think, was the best one so far. This has been a great interview, Darren. Thanks so much. I'm sure everyone at home is going to appreciate it. All your shareholders are going to appreciate it. Continued success, and it sounds like we're going to have you back on a couple more times before this is all done. So thanks for everything, and thanks for the spin out. Really appreciate that.
Hey, thanks, George. Appreciate everything. Take care.
You've been watching, or you've been listening, or if you've been listening by podcast, Darren Blaney, President CEO of American Creek Resources, trades on the TSX Venture Exchange under the stock symbol AMK. Look, it's not too late if you're not a shareholder yet for you to do some great due diligence. Get to the Agoracom hub first, the profile page for American Creek, because we know this is a behemoth. There's a lot of information to sort through. We've neatly and nicely summarized it for you to help you with that big picture, and then head over to the American Creek Resources site and really dive into the details, and then sit back and watch and wait to see what's going to happen, not only the next 3-4 months, but now with the spin out, we got another beautiful story to be part of for the next couple of years. So thanks for joining us, everyone. Have a fantastic day. See you next time.